What's happening, Captains? It's me. Truly the dumbest. And I don't think it's a long shot to say that Freddy is one of the most boring and awful killers in Dead by Daylight. His ability is super ineffective, his dream world is super ineffective, and overall he's just super ineffective. Now for those who haven't played the game, I'll give you a quick description of what his ability is. Basically, Freddy has two factors to his ability. He has a chase or an anti-loot power, and he has a teleport power, or gen power, macro power, whatever you want to call it. Now, at first this sounds good. You know, he's got a couple options for ability usage. You know, sounds like it'll be interesting, teleporting to gens and dropping things on people, but it's awful. It's really not good. Now, I want to give a more in-depth description of what each of these things do. First, you have his dream snares. Now, his dream snares, what you do, to sum it up quickly before I get to the mic drop, you place a little thing that triggers and it slows survivors down. Now, that sounds good. Now, that seems like that'd be a good thing. So why does it suck? Well, there are two reasons. One, you can only use it, or survivors can only activate it when they're in the dream world. So if you chase the survivor out of the dream world, you'll get no use out of his dream snares, nor will you get use out of his dream pallets, which we'll get to in a second. Second, he only gives a 15% decrease for 3 seconds. Now, 15% sounds like a bit, but it does not help a lot. You would actually be kind of surprised on how weak it is most of the time, because unfortunately, DBD does not have the greatest map design. Most loops are very long and very jagged and rigid, so it's very easy for survivors not only to just walk around these things because they're very obvious to see, but it also makes it very easy to shrug off. Now if we do a loop on, let's say, Macmillan maps, they have the boxes, they're very, like I said, jagged, miss weirdly shaped, all that. Odds are dream snares won't do a lot for you, unless the survivor, of course, it doesn't know how to play it well. Now besides that, because there's not a lot to say on his ability as a whole, which is even sadder, we have Dream Pellets, which is an ability you can activate through add-ons. Now, first of all, nobody wants to use add-ons to activate their ability. It sucks. It's really sad having to waste an add-on slot if you want to get a different ability. It's two, it does nothing. It quite honestly is one of the most useless abilities in the game. Now, personally, of course, if you watch my tier list video, I do enjoy using them because they're dumb fun, but they are very, very awful. You get no benefit to it unless you're in a very separated loop or the survivor's already injured. Now, what does it do? Basically, what it does is when there's a free pallet or a free opening where a pallet would spawn, you can place the dream pallets, and then when survivors drop it, it'll explode into blood and you'll be able to hit them. Now, that sounds pretty good. Why does it suck? Well, for one, it only triggers in the dream world. And two, there's nothing else to it. You cannot place dream pallets on already placed pallets while in sleep or something or while in chase or something like that. You cannot, you don't get any slowdown, you don't get any aura, you don't get anything when they get triggered besides the hit. And sometimes you don't even get the hit if they pre-drop enough. And if the survivors know you have dream pallets, they'll be pre-dropping a lot, I'll tell you that much. Now, this all sounds bad. I hope it sounds bad, because it is. But what about his teleportation? How is his teleportation working? Well, first of all, it takes 3 seconds to actually perform the teleport action, which is a long time, especially when you consider the fact that when you start teleporting, whichever gen you're teleporting to, erupts into a blood mayhem with a little Freddy popping out the front. Now, inherently, there's nothing wrong with this, besides the fact that it takes 3 seconds. If it was any shorter time, I'm sure it'd be much better. But it's not, so it's really useless. As well as that, or on top of that, it takes 45 seconds normally to just get your ability back after teleporting. That doesn't include the 15% cooldown reduction for a sleep survivor, which if all of the survivors are asleep, that would equal to 27 seconds, which is not great. really, for ability, or like for a lone ability, like lone quotations, I guess. But I digress. And if you want to cancel his teleport, you'll get a 10-second reset penalty, which is awful as well. Because a single second as killer means 4 seconds for the survivors. So that might as well be 40 seconds you're wasting. Now that makes no sense what I just said, and actually doesn't add up at all. But this is my video, so shut up. Beyond that, what else does the Frederick do? What does he get? He has what we astronomers like to call the dream world, in which survivors, they fall asleep and the sky goes funny, goes a bit static. Does Freddy get any benefit from this? No, not really, actually. I'm sure you would be surprised to know that in the dream world, the only things that happen, the only things that occur, is the nightmare gains a lullaby, and survivors can activate the traps. Also, a 15% regression, or a 15% reduction on the teleport per survivor asleep. But that is 3 things. Now, I don't know if you've seen the movies, and if you have, you're probably offended by this, horribly offended like I am. But if you're not, you're probably thinking, I don't see why this is so bad. Sure, it can be a bit weak, but why is it so atrocious as you're saying? Well, there are 2 reasons why it's atrocious. One is, like I said several times, this anti-loop doesn't work half the game, and also does barely nothing. And 2, this is nothing like Freddy. Now, although the Dead by Daylight Freddy is based off the 2010 reboot with Jackie Earle Haley, not even he was like this. At least he had an interesting thing where he'd be psychotic. You know, this thing's just not psychotic. This is boring. This is like if you took the worst aspects of old Freddy. Actually, not even that, because there is no bad aspects of old Freddy. This is like if you took the worst aspects of new Freddy and just made it into an ability. There's nothing to this. There's nothing Freddy about this. Now, I'm sure you can argue Freddy would mess with survivors trap-wise, dream palette-wise, but even then, it's very boring in comparison to what it could be. Just like English, someone standing next to me and me standing next to them is embarrassing for me because I can't speak it properly. But, so why did I bring this up? Well, originally, although probably arguably just as weak, Freddy, when he first released, had a very interesting ability. Very Freddy-like ability, some would say. Basically, what his ability was, to my knowledge and my remembrance of all the videos I watched, because I did not play at the time, he would pull survivors into the dream world using a separate ability, and before pulling them in, he had no interaction with survivors. Now, that sounds pretty weak. And it can be, and it was. But it was fun. It was something that actually resembled Freddy in a certain weird way. This does not even begin to show this current ability. It's not even begin to show what Freddy could be, what Freddy is in the movies. And I find that to be quite atrocious. So, what I hope to do with this video, and to any Dead by Daylight players, feel free to critique me, critique my thing, or give some insights on some better ideas or changes down in the comments below. But beyond that, my goal for this video, I hope to give the perfect Nightmare rework. And by hope, I mean I have given the perfect Nightmare rework. Because you know what they say? If you weren't a cocky bastard about your work, are you really working at all? Now, without further ado, we shall move on to part 1 of my rework in this 8-part, what is likely to be 8-part video, The Power. And what's happening, Captains? It's me, truly the post-production here. And I just want to apologize ahead of time. I was planning on re-recording all of the audio, so it's like, a bit more coherent and not as stumbly, because I do stumble over my words a lot in this, due to my poor writing and lack of proofreading. But I did come down with some kind of cold, and it makes it a bit harder for me to talk, easily for a long period of time. Just wanted to insert this really quickly and apologize ahead of time for the lack of quality throughout most of this video. Without further ado, let's move on to the next portion. The Dream Demon. Hold the power button to pull survivors into the dream realm. When pulling a survivor into the dream realm, you gain a token, a dream token. You start each trial with 3 dream tokens, with a cap of 8. When attacking, the nightmare will pull survivors in with a basic attack, but will only fill half of the dream meter, which will fill passively over time. Special ability, Dream Illusions. While in the loadout section of the menus, selecting the power icon will open up a selection menu showing 5 icons. A generator, a window, a pallet, a totem, and an exit gate. All icons will be grayed out until 2 are selected. Those 2 will become objectives, which you can block using the active ability button. The rest will be, when activated, will be illusions, and will not actually block the objective. Blocking a generator, exit gate, or totem will cost 2 tokens. Blocking a pallet or window will cost 1. Illusions do not require dream tokens. The objective will stay blocked for 15 seconds. Illusions will stay for 30. When a survivor approaches an illusion awake, it will dissipate upon impact. When asleep, upon impact the survivor will be hindered by 4%. The effect lingers for 5 seconds. When the illusion is no longer being touched, it will dissipate. All dream illusions take 0.5 seconds to block. To be placed. Dang it. My horrible writing. Before entering a game, the loadout will glow to indicate if the illusions were checked beforehand. I'm going to drop the whole voice bit. Dream World. When pulled into the dream world, everything around the survivors will change to match the twisted mind of Freddy Krueger, distorting the environment with walls that aren't there, buildings that disappear, stairs that don't exist, hallways that are just dead ends, all of this in a twisted sky to mess with the survivors further. The dream world changes switch between survivors changing every time. They are in the dream world and cannot be seen by the nightmare. I read that so poorly, it doesn't matter. While in the dream world, survivors hear no terror radius, but a lullaby heard at 32 meters away. The nightmare can only be seen at from 16 meters or closer. While awake, the nightmare cannot be seen by 24 meters away and will only be intermittently seen from 24 to 10 meters away. Anything closer from 10 meters, the nightmare will be seen clearly. Falling asleep. When falling asleep, there will be a timer with 4 pips. Every pip represents 5 seconds. When all 4 pips complete, the survivor will fall asleep. Survivors can wake up by failing skill checks, finding clocks, or obtaining stopwatches through chests. Survivors can slow down falling asleep process by using pills. Clocks. Every time a survivor falls asleep, 3 out of 6 clocks will spawn around randomly. Clocks take 4 seconds to wake survivors up. Scavenging clocks. When awake, survivors can scavenge the desks clocks sit on to find either stopwatches, 35% chance, or bottle of pills, 65% chance. Stopwatches. Only when awake you can find stopwatches in chests. Watches are portable clocks with 4 uses. Take up an item slot and take 8 seconds to wake up survivors. Bottle of pills. Found through chests and with one use, slow down the time it takes to fall asleep by 4 seconds as a whole. Interactions, which I accidentally put the space incorrectly in between, but that doesn't matter. You're not going to pay attention to that. Survivors. When asleep, you cannot see or interact with awake survivors, but you still have collision, just to give the impression that you're still there. Nerfs. For every plip active, the survivor will gain a 1% decrease in repairing, cleansing, and healing speeds. After 30 seconds of being within the dream world, survivors will be affected with the hindered status effect until awake. After 45 seconds of being within the dream world, survivors will be affected with the exhausted status effect until awake. The Nightmare. Chase. While in chase, the Nightmare stain will spin at completely random speeds and in random directions. Passive effects. Buffs. For every survivor asleep, the Nightmare will gain a 1.5% speed increase. Now really quickly, before we move on, I do have a couple of things I need to update with this, because I clearly did not do good proofreading. 1, for every plip active, the survivor will gain a 3% decrease in repairing, cleansing, and healing speeds. And 2, where is it? There's nothing else. I lied to myself. My lord, this is a horrible mess of me showing that I can't read. Well, now that the power's done, hopefully, you guys are reading along, so you can completely ignore my awful reading and awful writing. Well, now it's time to move on to the perks, the teachable perks. And without further ado, ignore this ever happened. But not really, because I'm proud of this. Now time for the teachable perks. The final nightmare. Finishing generators can be a freeing feeling, but victory won't always come easy, or even at all. When all generators are finished and the survivor is hooked, one gate will be completely blocked by the entity for 10, 20, or 30 seconds. If the survivor is hooked after the gate is open, both gates will be blocked for 15, 30, 45 seconds. My world, my rules. It's your world and your rules. Who could have guessed? The entity now blocks vaults after they are interacted with 2 times rather than 3 times. When a vault is blocked, you gain the ability to walk through it at 60, 65, and 70% your normal walking speed. Now it is time for... One sec, I lost it. Crap, where'd it go? Now it's time for Never Escape Again. Your game is for the smartest and the smartest alone. Anything less and they're your plaything. While no generators are active, any survivor that enters a 12, 14, and 16 meter radius of the generators will gain the hindered status for 4.5%. For each generator completed, survivors are slowed by an extra 0.5%. When the generators are all complete, you see survivors' auras while within the radius of the generators. Auras linger for 2 seconds. Now, I don't really know how any of these perks would play into the meta well. I really don't know if these, like I said, will be too strong or too weak. That is unfortunately something that happens with concepts, is you don't really know how well it will play out. But that's it for the perks. Much shorter than I for sure thought it would be. But now let's move on to the add-ons. And yes, I do have every possible, or I do have all the add-on possibilities for this. And by all the possibilities, I mean, ideas for our add-ons for him. Moving on. Now it is time for the add-ons. Now the first add-on, the iridescent add-on, Chest of Souls. The Chest of the Dream Demon. Each soul captured strengthening his power. Dream Manifestation replaces Dream Illusions. Requires 2 Dream Tokens. The Nightmare can now teleport to generators at all times. Charge time 1.5 seconds, cooldown 20 seconds. Cooldown reduction per survivor in the Dream World to 10%. Obviously just a buffed version of his old teleport, or his current teleport. Finger Knives. A horrifying sight of claws protruding out of the Nightmare's fingers, sending fear and disgust into all who see it. Every 5 seconds, survivors fall asleep for 25 seconds. Afterwards, they wake up, and the cycle continues. Survivors cannot forcibly wake up by any means, whereas the Nightmare can't pull survivors into the Dream World. Dream Illusion meter charges 100% faster. The Nightmare no longer gains speed boost for survivors asleep. Instead, a survivor asleep will gain a 3% speed decrease. The Nightmare is granted 6 tokens at the start of the trial and gains them back by survivors activating already placed traps. That just kind of a micro-sleep kind of function for the Nightmare's ability. Now moving on to his purple add-ons. We have Bedside Coffee. Coffee left on the bedstand. The caffeine keeping people awake, leaving them far more vulnerable for when they inevitably fall asleep. While asleep, survivors can only see the Nightmare at 10 meters and closer. All survivors are blind while asleep. Now just kind of like a buff to his overall power. Burning Pipes. Remnants of the Nightmare's past stomping grounds. The pipes burning all the same. When a survivor triggers a dream illusion, Survivors, when triggering dream illusions, force all other survivors within a 32-meter radius to scream, revealing their positions. Kind of like an infectious fright, but when activating, the dream illusion. Dusty Fedora, a hat with the name embroidered in it. Freddy Krueger. When asleep, survivors enter the dream realm. When survivors enter the dream realm, the nightmare's lullaby will be hidden for 20 seconds. Basically just an undetectable for entering the dream realm. Nothing too special. Finger syringes. You know what haunts their past, so show them you care. When the nightmare hits a survivor, they will be infected with the hemorrhage status for 45 seconds. Sounds of footsteps are 50% louder within the dream world. Again, just kind of a passive buff to his ability. Now moving on to his green add-ons, we have Blood Snare. It feels like blood. It looks like blood. But why is it so thick? Triggering dream illusions inflicts exhaustion for 35 seconds. Obviously, just kind of a little bit of a nod towards the current dream snare. Awful load of crap. Torn photo. The torn photo of Marge Thompson. The nightmare starts with 5 dream tokens. The obsession starts the trial of sleep. Obviously, kind of a reference towards the fact that all killers, in movies, horror movies, especially in the Nightmare series, tend to focus on their one obsession. Tuft of Sweater. Proof of the man and the ability to pull him out. After being stunned, if the dream tokens are available, all vaults within a 8-meter radius will be blocked. When a survivor activates the entity block on vaults, if the dream tokens are available, all pallets in an 8-meter radius will be blocked. Kind of like a blood favor in a way. An interesting little blood favor. Waterbed. A perfect place for an easy kill and an easier one-liner. When asleep, survivors, when walking within your terror radius, place pools of blood that can audibly be heard by the nightmare. Moving on to Worn Jump Rope. A sign of the nightmare's approach. The nightmare's lullaby becomes 35% quieter to all sleeping survivors. Kind of, once again, just a little bit of a stealth add-on. Always gotta get them stealth add-ons, am I right? Now, for boiler room scraps. Years of tinkering gives you a sense for the sounds of engineering. Sounds of generators being repaired by sleeping survivors are heard from 6 meters further away. It's kind of like surveillance. Felt fun. Why not? Green trench coat. A coat worn by a different demon, but nonetheless terrifying. When in the dream world, if survivors fail a skill check, their auras will be revealed for 5 seconds. Kind of like a reverse gearhead, in a way. Minus the whole damaging bit. Look of Terror. A horrifying skeleton face that stops all in their tracks. When damaging a survivor within the dream world, the nightmare gains a 5% speed boost for 30 seconds. Super long sprint burst. I don't know. I'm kind of just making stuff up of why I came up with this as I go on. Mechanical Claws. A marvel of engineering and torture. The amount of dream tokens taken per use of dream illusions is reduced by 50%. So basically, instead of let's say placing or blocking a pallet with your ability, instead of requiring a full token, it requires half a token. Severed Fingers. A little trick to scare them and show them you mean business. Decreases the dream illusion charge time by 20%. Now on to the grace. Burnt Flesh. Your scars give you a sick, funny bone towards pain and suffering. When a survivor triggers dream illusions, you gain a 7% speed increase for 3 seconds. Now time for Guardianing Gloves. A precursor for the device to come. Vaulting speeds are increased by 1.25% per survivor asleep. Kind of like a fancy, I guess, fire up in a way. Yeah, fancy little fire up. Mounted TV. You prepare yourself for prime time with one-liners, no matter the cheese or annoyance. When looking at a survivor, the nightmare will rattle off a one-liner and reveal all his tricks, giving off a burning effect at all the dream pallets and dream vaults. It grants a 200% blood point increase in the DVs in this category. Maybe a bit too strong on the blood point increase, but it's just a meme add-on. No one's would use it anyway. The Power Glove, a device of control and beating high scores. When a survivor enters a locker, when within the nightmare's terror radius, they'll be forced out. Just kind of a dumb, fun add-on, really. That's all. Nothing too special there. Yeah, that's really it for that. Now moving on to my next bit. Well, that was a very deep, yet oddly brief overview of my idea for a rework for the Nightmare. Now, I love Freddy Krueger. I love the Nightmare on Elm Street films. So it was really disappointing to me when I learned that Freddy was not a good killer, and I learned that he was not fun after some time. And I feel it's truly a travesty that an icon of horror such as him has been relegated to the bottom of tier lists. I also feel the same for Michael. I do have ideas for a rework on him, maybe something I'll do later on, not as in-depth as this one is. I am thinking about starting a series for possible changes and reworks. That'll come up later on in time. So for now, we have this, and who knows, maybe if I'm proud of the way this turned out, I'll do another one. I do have many ideas. Like I said, if you're not overconfident in your ideas, you might as well not have came up with an idea at all. And now really quickly before I end it, I want to apologize for the speech impediment that I gained throughout the course of this video and my inability to write words properly. Most of this stuff is a first glance, kind of, besides like looking at the actual percentages and changing it around a bit. I never really actually took a second to stop and read the words out loud. So if it is super jank, don't blame me, blame everyone else. But I do apologize for that. Now, I'm probably going to do some voiceover commentary and post, making fun of myself and clearing things up a bit as the video goes on. But beyond that, that's all I have for you today. Or I guess this week, whatever you want to call it. Without further ado, something goodbye in a different language that I cannot speak.